try again. All right, okay, we're on. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Twa Auld Heids with myself and Mike Fenwick. Tonight we're welcoming guests. You probably know two of these faces really well, and you'll get to know the other one a lot better over the coming months as well. Welcome, Ever. Carol.
You can say,
yeah. Eh?
I was going to say you can say that I've changed my name. I'm Wren because people know me as Wren, don't they? So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce the new one anyway. Carol Claridge and Diane Mathieson, who's the first person I've ever had on twice.
Yay! I feel very privileged, thank you.
Right, well, basically, tonight's broadcast, we're going to cover the 500 miles, the original 500 miles, the second 500 miles, which Wren and Carol did to London, and then we're going to speak about what's coming up at the middle of September, St Andrew's Day. Which is going to be 1320 miles, but it's probably going to be using the 500 miles hashtag, although I couldn't swear to that. So basically, let's go. Right. 2 years ago, on the 5th, I believe it was the 15th of September, we were up in Slegachen in Skye, ready to start. Would you like to give us a bit of your memories of the journey?
Oh my goodness, there's just so many of them. I think thinking to that first meeting, actually, when everybody turned up, that was actually, for some of us, it was the first time we'd actually met each other. So everybody was just like putting tents up and just, yeah, just anticipating what was going to be ahead, because nobody knew, and this was a new thing that none of us had done as a group before. So there was yeah, some of us knew each other a bit, yeah, others not at all, and we were there in the most beautiful place ever. It was fantastic, and we were just thinking we've got this awesome thing to do. And I actually know right from the beginning, I remember thinking this, that I have to complete this has to be done, it's so important. If I end up having to sleep under a hedge, I'm not bothered, I've got to do this. It was massively important, and that was the initial feeling that we were going to do something momentous, not just as a group of people. We were on a journey. That was it, and a massive journey, and it was a journey in many different ways. Yeah.
You slept under the hedge a few times, but you when we arrived in Edinburgh, we definitely it definitely made it all worthwhile.
Oh, absolutely! It was yeah, it was amazing. It really was an absolute amazing. It was an absolute honour to be involved in it. I think we could never. At the beginning of it, you could never anticipate what the journey was going to be. The journey was more than just a walk. It was a group of people coming together. I feel like it's a family. It's a family. We started up a bunch of people, and we ended up like a family, a very tight family. And that within that, it was the love of the people that we met along the way as well, for the cause of independence. It was like people. There's one particular lady that really sticks in my head. It was an elderly lady. We were, I don't even know where we were. We were somewhere in the zone, and a car pulled up, and an elderly lady got out, and I think she said she was in her 80s, and she cried, and she gave me a hug, and she said, thank you so much for doing this. So I've been an independent supporter a long time. I'm not well. I don't think I'm going to see it in my lifetime. But to know that there are people who are still fighting for this cause just makes me so happy. And she filled up and cried. And that lady's face I can still see. And it's that sort of love for what we were doing. I think it's just awesome to be part of. Humbling, very humbling to be part of.
Carl?
Yes, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, similar to Wren in some ways. I mean, you kind of had an idea when you signed up for something like that. This is going to be something exceptional. This is going to be a rather unique experience. And as opposed to just doing a marathon or something like that, this was for a cause that was extremely important. Particularly at that time, it wasn't quite as bad, but you were seeing the development of things down south, and you knew it was particularly important that Scotland should have had this ages ago, even before Theresa May and Boris Johnson. That's a fact. But you started to see more and more how things were developing, and you thought, no, this is the thing that could potentially change the course. That was in my head, and I felt very strongly about that. So when I signed up to do it, I had absolutely no idea. And the group of us came together. We met at Sky, and I remember very clearly that first evening. We all got there a bit later because of a few delays with people coming together, and we all went to this restaurant, and we got to know each other a little bit over dinner, and then went back to our place. And from that moment onwards, we started to bond in even those of some of us bonded in a way of deep friendship, such as Ever and myself. And there were others that you bonded on in this cause. We happy few, we band of brothers. It felt very much like we were doing something really important, and people connected all the way. Just as Ever was saying, I remember when we got to one particular place, and there was this, I mentioned it before, but it made such an impression on me. This woman that had basically was being evicted from a farm holding. The building was completely empty. Yeah. But they'd laid on a buffet like no other. And she put on this stuff. I thought it was an empty property that they just happened to have around. And she said, no, we're being evicted, but we want, and that really touched me deeply. She got in mattresses to make sure we all slept comfortable, and she got drinks in and food beyond what we could actually eat. Yeah. And she picked us up from the actual city. We drove in a Land Rover there, and we had no idea until a certain point. And she said, "Oh yeah, we're being evicted, and that's why the house was empty." And I thought,
landowner, landowner was selling
the landowner, this tenancy thing, farm tenancy thing, which is very, very Westminster, really, isn't it? Let's face it. And that thing, more than a lot of, we heard a lot of stuff, but that really made a huge impression on me, that despite all this woman was prepared to lay her cards, lay her money, lay down everything and say, you know what, I've got nothing, but whatever I have is yours, because I really believe. And for me, she was right up there. If people talking about giving medals to the 500-mile walkers, they're the people that deserve the medals, really. Yes. Because the commitment that they put into it, completely without being named, without anybody seeing their photos or their Twitter account, these people did it because they believed in something. And, we got a certain notoriety or prominence out of this, which was never really the issue. But but people like that, they really, and that sort of joined the dots, because there were all sorts of those moments, you know,
all along the way. Yeah.
There were people that put us up, and one of them said, oh, we've just lost, we lost our son a year ago. And there was someone else, they put us up, and they were both the husband and the wife, Ronald and
Ronald.
They were dead literally months after we'd completed the thing, but they so believed in it, and they were so lovely, and you think, we really owe it. Every time something like this, every time I finish, I think, well, that's it for me. You know, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that again. And then there comes a situation that says, yeah, well, I really have to. And the thing is, when you think about people like that,
yeah,
you know, it really, particularly Ronald and his wife, actually, I think, because she must have known at that time that she was dying. We knew she was in discomfort, but we didn't know she was dying. No, and she was so generous and so lovely and so giving, and she believed so strongly in Scottish independence. And I think, well, bloody hell, Carl, you can get your fucking... Am I allowed to say... Am I allowed to use bad language?
We won't tell
Get your flipping...
Get your blooming shoes on and start walking. You know?
So, I'm listening to you both. As you both know, I tried to pull together the photographs as the journey went on and tried to help out as I could, but I wasn't on the journey. But I'm listening to you both. From Kyle Leakin, you went on a journey of discovery. I think that's the way I see it from what you're saying. Discovering who you were as people, and then discovering some of the wonderful people that you met. Dave, you said there's a book to be written and photographs to be published.
It's really strange, because Carl just brought something up there that's actually in the book that's been written by Dean, who was also one of the walkers, and he took a lot of photographs that are going to be in the book. Basically, almost everyone that we had major contact with on the 500 miles has got a mention in that book, except for the person with the farmhouse. And the reason that her name wasn't given was because it could cause trouble for her. But she was mentioned with a massive amount of love, because this was someone whose family had farmed that land for over 120 years.
Right. Exactly.
And they were being kicked off because and their daughter, I believe, had been threatened with a shotgun if they were one of the landlord's gamekeepers. So it was for what she went over and above the cause. So that's mentioned in the book. For me, the most incredible thing that I actually ever, I saw in the whole thing, was after 9 days of consistent rain, for the time we started, we arrived in Fraserburgh, and basically, like about 2 hours before the actual main group of walkers arrived in Fraserburgh, the sun came out, and there was this massive gold sunset, and there's a photograph of it, and it looks like it's been photoshopped. It's not. They were standing waiting for us to start that day, and they'd been there for 3 hours. And they had a piper and everything, and marched us right down Fraserburgh High Street. And the thing was, then people were coming out of their houses and waving, and it was, and the local Yes group says, we didn't know about these people. We didn't know they were Yes supporters. And the follow up of that afterwards was that they started to make contact, and Fraserburgh really, they got a massive amount of feedback from people they didn't know supported Yes, simply because of that walked in the high street, and it was utterly nuts. And that's with the one that's coming up. We hope that the Yes groups are going to be able to take the message that we're carrying this time and do the same thing with it all over Scotland, because it's a digital covenant. it's by definition something that happens online, and online you have bubbles. Well, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be taking it right out there, getting out into communities and letting them have something to talk about to people, and hopefully it's going to work out. So,
when's the book coming out, Dave? Do you know?
Well, basically, Dean's been trying to get it published for the last 6 months, and no publisher wants to have it. He obviously doesn't realise how much a market there's going to be. So, as far as I know, he's going to do it. He's going to self-publish it through Amazon and Kindle.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's going to be available relatively shortly. I proofread it yesterday for the first time in its finished form, with the photographs and everything. I'm going to send you a wee copy later on.
Just a wee thought. I don't know whether this will work or not, but you know, Andy Anderson has been writing books on currency, etc.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he does that under Andy Anderson Publications. So it might be worthwhile having a discussion. I'll maybe contact him for you. You can, or Dean can contact him. Might be a way of finding out how it can be done, because I know Andy has got his books published by himself, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever as I say, like I don't really know that much about it, but I have read it. Well, I've read it 2 or 3 times now. I read it every time it gets updated. But this is the first time I've seen it with the photographs, and it's a stunning documentary about the trip, and I was a bit in tears yesterday reading the proof.
Does that take us on to these 2 masochists? So who decided that is just not enough? Let's do something. Okay, so where's London? Get the map out. Let's go. Can you tell us what happened on that trip?
That happened because there'd been a lot of talk about 500 more, simply because the proclaimers had been such a big part of the, they supported the initial 500 miles. And so immediately people were looking for the sequel. And there were various ideas at various points, and nothing seemed to quite gel, or didn't seem to resonate. Because I was happy in principle to do it, but I think, like everybody, I didn't want to do it just because it was cute. We needed to do it because it was
an impetus. Yeah. Because
it was going to make a further the cause, rather than say, oh, look how great we are. We're doing another 500 miles. And so we were looking at various possibilities, and then it was a bit quiet for a while. And then in March last year, dear old Nigel Farage, who we all respect and love, made the decision, in light of Brexit, which was coming up, which I'm a strong opponent of. He decided he was going to do I think it was something like 230 something miles, and it received incredible coverage. It was everywhere. People were talking about this as if this was Mao Zedong's, or Nelson Mandela's Walk to Freedom kind of thing.
Oh, puddle marches.
Yeah, and I looked at it and thought, I have issues with Farage, and I have issues with his particular rhetoric, and I felt initially it was just an immediate response. I thought, 230 odd miles, how cute. And I put that a heading with a picture of us 500 milers on Facebook. And I thought, well, that will show him. And the more I was thinking about it, I thought, we got to take this further. What he can do, 230 odd miles, that's almost half of the 500. And I thought, what he can do, we can do twice, and without all that stuff.
And
so
before him.
I phoned Wren and said, just so you know, I'm leaving for Westminster in 10 days. And the idea is that I get there a day before Farage and his cronies. Yeah. And so I spoke to Wren about it, and Wren said, well, I'm coming with you. So anyway, we hadn't got any money really. And the thing was, Nigel Farage at the time, he was charging like £50 a head.
Charging people to do it.
People to do it with him. And I said, I don't want any finance. I'm not going to ask anybody for any financial support. I'll just make do. I hadn't got the money. I was using my rent money to do it, but I thought it was so important, I had to do it. And Wren was of the exact same thing. So I mentioned it to Cliff Survey, because he'd done the, we'd met him and got to know him, but he'd also done the high-vis jackets, and mentioned it to him, and he was incredibly good. And he said, oh, I can do the support group, and I'll set up a site. And he did the jackets for us free of charge. And he was like the go-between, because we were heading down south through England. And although we're both English by birth, we knew that it could be potentially controversial. We wouldn't be on friendly territory necessarily, being so blatantly Scottish with our idea. So that's basically what we did. And the thing is, people, all of a sudden, people were saying, how can we help? Here's some money. And you know, somebody said, oh, if people want to support you, how could they? I said, no, we don't need that. We just want it. And people would say, no, you know, here's some money, get yourself a meal. Oh, here's some money, because we were planning on wild camping most of the way. In the end, we only camped, we probably camped for a week or so of the whole entire thing, you know. And it was so great how people, the situation created the momentum where people wanted to be part of this, and it got a lot bigger than we ever intended, to be honest.
Was there a story about something about going down the side of an embankment into the woods at night when it was dark?
Oh no! I tell you what did happen though. Well, I don't know if we ever mentioned this. I don't. Well, there was one nearly falling down an embankment because it was dark. But no, I don't know why this always seems to happen. But there was a guy. There was like a body at the bottom of an embankment.
Oh yes, yeah.
And it was kind of
St Albans. That was St Albans.
Yeah, there's a person down there. Anyway, we weren't quite sure whether it was like, because they're kind of half covered in leaves, whether it was actually a dead body or whether it was just like, you know, somebody who just like decided to have a sleep at the bottom of this embankment. So, we kind of started going down the embankment, and the next thing, this guy launched himself out of the leaves, and he had this massive pole with him. It was taller than him. It was like this about 7 foot long pole. And he started swinging it at us, and he ended up throwing it at us, actually. And I think it was just some guy who was, you know, I think he might have been perhaps a bit under the influence of something, under some leaves. But yeah, that was. We thought we'd found a dead body. That was St Albans. That was Albans. That was it.
Yes,
so that was
St Albans. Yeah.
We had It was a very different walk. It was a very different walk again, because it was when I say most of it was in England, it was actually you don't realise how far, because we walked from Edinburgh through to Glasgow, and then down the like the footpath by the 74 down that way, and you actually don't realise how much walking we actually did in Scotland before we hit England.
It was a considerable amount.
It was, and then in England, again, talking to people, because a lot of the talk at that point in time was about Brexit, because that was coming up, and it was actually amazing the amount of positive support we got from English people who were going, if we were Scottish, you know, we'd be out of this. And it was Theresa May was as the Prime Minister at the time, and the venom that came out from a lot of people about Westminster was I don't know if it was surprising, but it was very, very obvious that there was a lot of discontent down there about what was going on with Westminster. Yeah.
Even those that didn't necessarily understand the Scottish cause or necessarily agree, not all of them agreed with the Brexit issue, and not all of them agreed about Scottish independence. But the one thing, and I mentioned this in an interview before, the one thing we did discover was there was an enormous disdain for Westminster.
Absolutely.
You know, if we started from the point of, although it was clear we were representing Scotland, we had our saltire scarves, and we had our saltire flags, and everything like that. Everything screamed.
And our jackets. And
I'd even got my haggis on a leash half the way. You know. And you know, it was clearly Scottish, and some people warmed to that, and other people, you know, not so much. But if they knew your issue was with Westminster, there were very few exceptions. One pub in particular, and you know, a couple of individuals on the way down. But statistically, everybody agreed that yes, Theresa May was a bit of a, and everybody agreed that they really didn't give a about anybody else.
Yes, yeah. Do you remember there was 3 little boys in that council estate? Yeah, I've forgotten what they, but there was a lot of swearing, and
that was in Rotherham. Yeah,
and what they suggested that we might do with.
They suggested that Theresa May should align her head in a strategic position to the American president. So,
that was right. Yes. Yeah.
Putting it nicely.
Yes. Yeah.
We said this on a video, and somebody tried to remove our video for being offensive or something like that.
But that was it was just reporting.
We were I was careful about how we related that situation, but yeah.
It's a kind of strange position, isn't it? That when you
it was for Theresa May.
But no. I wasn't heading in that direction. I was thinking Westminster.
We've moved on.
I've moved on. We're trying, and we will succeed to be rid of Westminster.
Yes.
But in a way, you have to feel very, very sorry for the rest of the UK.
Yes.
Exclude Wales, exclude Northern Ireland.
Definitely.
You can't escape what's going on in Westminster.
No.
That day of reckoning will come at some stage. And I think it will be helped when Scotland gets rid of Westminster.
Yeah.
I think the English will begin. I'd phrase that differently. People resident in England will begin to wake up to actually what's going on. Which at the present time, I don't think they really do.
I think some of them are.
Yeah. Oh, Mike, when in 2014, I was still in England, and I sat on my sofa and watched the referendum and cried. Then this is me in England, and I cried because I thought, unless Scotland breaks free from this union, then we, as in me, then living in England, and the rest of the people like me who are living in not the best conditions, people like me have got no hope. And I was actually looking towards Scotland to break free from the union, because I felt that would give us some hope, because the politics of England would have to change, because the politics of England cannot continue as it is.
No.
It's destroying it's destroying its own people. I
was born in East London. I come from East London, and I was raised in central England. It was an area known for shoemaking until Margaret Thatcher ruined the whole industry, amongst many others. And now I'm in Scotland, and I'm, it gets a little bit tiresome trying to explain that you're not anti-English. I was very proud of being born in London, and I was proud of even the area where I grew up, which was pretty rough. People were doing their best to try and make the best for their families, as all of us are. And the thing is, all of them were equally affected, which is something we also saw with the second 500, that a lot of people were recognizing that. And the only difference is that the elites seem to be a bit more blatant about their behavior. It's like several hundred years ago where they didn't even have to pretend to give a damn about anybody else. And in 2014, I was at work in central England listening to it, and I was just glad. I didn't have an opinion either way, because I didn't feel entitled because I wasn't living in Scotland. But I was happy that Scotland at least at last had the opportunity to make a decision on what had been imposed on them, which was basically a forced marriage. It was a forced marriage back then. And I thought, well, okay, whichever way Scotland decides, that's how it should be. It's not for me to say they should have independence. It's not for me to say they should stay in the Union. But it became quite clear very quickly that Westminster hadn't really allowed that choice. And it seemed as if everybody had, they voted on it, they decided to say, but they didn't. And more we've been seeing the tactics they've been using to try and take that away from the Scots.
I kind of promise.
So we need to stop pretending that it was actually a fair vote. We know jolly well that it wasn't. That sounds really British, doesn't it? But it sounds really well. It's only because I didn't want to say fucking. My mum's wanting to watch this at some point.
I kind of promised Dave that I wouldn't do anything too political and get away from this, but I'm going to just insert something here.
Sure.
There's probably on the surface 3 ways that Scotland can become independent. Mm-hmm. One will be people signing a referendum and voting yes.
Aye.
Yeah.
The other will be the number of votes cast at next May's election. Yeah. The third, and for me, the absolute desirable criteria is the covenant, which is what your walk is going to be about.
Absolutely.
Because absolutely deep down, what I would hope Scotland will do is declare its independence, not through a leader, not through a political party, but that history will record.
Exactly.
The independence came about because the people voted for it themselves.
Yes.
Exactly.
Via the covenant.
Yes.
And that is 100%. Recorded in history as how it happened.
Absolutely.
Because we got here from 1707 because the people were excluded.
Yeah.
This time round, I hope it's the people that achieve it.
It was the Tories of the day, basically, that voted for Scotland to be part of the Union. Let's face it. They sold out Scotland, and it was the barons and the landowners. Well, the barons and the landowners are the modern day Tories.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
And now we're going to be joined by Diane Mathieson, who is one of the people who's putting together the 1,320 miles, which Wren, Carl, I believe Dean and Jim are also going to be doing. She should be coming on just about now. So Diane, you've sort of joined the crew here that were also on the first one. Would you like to tell us a little bit about why you've joined and the kind of things that you've got planned for us.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I joined the Covenant team after signing the Assembly and after doing some work with some of the team on things over the past few months. And for us, obviously, we are trying to gather as many signatures as we can to sign that covenant and get us into the blockchain and get the Assembly up and running. So due to the fact that people aren't meeting and we can't hold events and things at the moment, the idea came about doing another 500 miles. And then obviously the team, we were all chatting about this, and then someone else came up with the idea of saying, why don't we make it 1320 miles? The symbolism between that and obviously the declaration of our growth, 1320, it seemed like this year would be the perfect time to do that. So we live in hope, obviously, that we can find walkers to walk 1320 miles. I know there are some brave people out there who are considering it at the moment, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. And for myself, actually, I'm really keen to join the walk. So at the moment, I'm just negotiating to see if I can get time off work so that I can do 500 of that stretch. There's no way I'll manage the 1320, but I think 500 for me would be a massive achievement. So I just wanted to get involved, have a little bit of fun, but more than anything, spread the message of the covenant and the blockchain. Because I think things that are going on right now are kind of influencing us to say we need to take action and we need to take it quick. And I think the most important thing that we need to understand in Scotland is that we are sovereign and we need to use that. But obviously, logistically, for the 1320 miles, there's quite a lot of planning involved in that. But because of COVID, we are looking at planning the event to run around social distancing measures if it needs to be. At the moment, we don't know where we'll be in a couple of months' time, and we don't know what will happen in a couple of months' time. So we decided that initially we would make the 1320 COVID friendly. And then if, we get through phase 3 and we get through phase 4 and we don't need that, then we can do it just normally. But in actual fact, walking, you don't tend to walk in large groups. So the walkers could quite easily socially distance. They could easily walk 2 meters apart. And we can easily get very small teams of bubbles to support those walkers that work in almost relays. So they wouldn't necessarily have to contact one another, but you can have pairs of people that are in one bubble that support the walkers for a certain distance, and then you can get another pair to come in and pick it up on the way down the route. There are all sorts of other health and safety things that I've looked into for work in terms of the equipment that we would need and those types of things. So the focus is very much on the safety of the walkers and the core team, and we will have registered first aiders there that will be fully briefed on COVID responses and COVID guidelines as well, to make sure that, first of all, it's safe and that we're doing something that we can do. And then secondly, to make sure that if there is a need, obviously we can't have large gatherings, we can't have events in the places that we arrive. So it's working with all the volunteers and yes groups in all of those areas to see what they can organise that is COVID friendly and that will fit with all the guidelines that have been given. So there's a lot of work to go into it, and we could do all this work and not need it, but we figured that it'd be best to do it so that no matter what happens, the event can still go ahead.
Can I chuck in something, Dave, just for a second? I made a promise to someone, Diane, on a post on Independence Live. I think you've largely covered it, but let me just pose the question, and if you want to say anything additional, just do so. Came from an Irene McGrath, and it's maybe a view a lot of people will have because we're stuck in the virus position just now. What she said was, sorry, demonstrations are out for now. Why would you hold meetings or anything? Now, what I'm hoping, and Dave and I have agreed, is that tonight we'll only maybe start touching on what's planned. There's a lot of work to be done, people to be pulled in. And what Dave and I will do, if we're doing a show, we will try and update everyone with other information, either with you on the show, or if you're up to the neck just organising everything, pass us the information and we'll make sure it gets out. But I think you've covered the point about dealing with it safely. But is there anything you would like to add to that?
No, I think there is a kind of 50-50 split at the moment, with some people saying we shouldn't be doing this and we shouldn't be doing that and we shouldn't be doing the next thing. But then there's also an urgency in us getting our voices heard here. With Brexit, I know that you were speaking on your last show about Brexit approaching on the 31st of December, and we are essentially powerless to do anything about it. And if we don't do something, then we won't be heard, and we'll just have to follow suit. So I think there's a part of the movement that doesn't want to have meetings and events and things, but as we've realized across the professional world and across the movement ourselves, that we can take stuff online, we can still campaign online, we can still get our message across online, but that doesn't necessarily reach everyone. So by going through all the communities, but by keeping ourselves at a distance, we can actually reach all the people on the ground as well, to have that conversation and to make them aware of the blockchain democracy that's been designed for them, that they can use. And if we don't go out and do that event, then I don't see that we can get that message across to each and every community. But as I say, by doing it in line with the COVID guidelines that have been set out by the Scottish Government, then we're doing it in a sort of COVID pandemic friendly way. People are starting to move around a bit more now. And so I don't really see how we shouldn't do it, but then that's my personal opinion.
Let me read you the other post that appeared. It came from a lady called Tricia Jones, who said, "I have no idea what the plan behind this is, but a long walk to freedom could mean so many things for so many people. Backed by an amazing social media campaign, it could be very powerful. If we can do it on our own, with our family, or limited groups, all observing social distancing, we have to think outside the box, keep independence front and centre in the months to come." And then, God bless Tricia, she said, "I could walk 500 miles. So there's your shades of opinion.
Mike,
Yeah.
could I just say something there?
Yes.
Yeah, the 2 points. Firstly, the business with COVID. And although we're being very responsible with whatever's being planned within the framework of the whatever the COVID situation is at the time, we need to bear in mind that Westminster has absolutely no regard for COVID. They give it lip service at the most. They really are completely indifferent to the actual effect on the population. And they're using COVID. Westminster is clearly using COVID as a smokescreen while they do whatever they wish. And so it's quite right that we take into account of it, but we can't stop just because of COVID, because that's exactly the environment that the Tories are currently getting away with murder, literally with. And on the other point to what, was it Tricia? The second lady, what she said about joining the places and not, that's exactly what people were saying, particularly on the first 500 miles. We were going to places where nobody had ever been, or no big event had ever been, and we were joining the dots of all these little villages, and people were coming out and they were saying, you do not realize what this means to us. It's so important to us. And that was one of the big things we took from the original 500. So if people are already getting that feel for the next event from that, that's perfect, because in my mind, the original 500 was a revolutionary thing that started this momentum going. Everything else is part of that revolution. It's an ongoing thing. It isn't a revolution by default, continues moving, and it revolves and revolves. It's not a movement. A movement starts somewhere and it stops, and then it starts and it stops. This is all part of the same timeline. Yeah. So I think it's really quite relevant what that lady said, and God bless her for that.
Ever, would you like to tell us what your idea is on it, considering this all started with you posting a picture of your rucksack?
Yeah, it did. I think I'm going to have to mention COVID before I start that, because I think we're all concerned about it, and I think if we're all bearing that in mind before we're doing any of this. My original post was basically a picture of my rucksack, and feeling very much that at the moment, what the Yes movement, the independence movement needs to do is to be shown to be supporting the Scottish economy and to doing some positive things for Scotland. And how could we do that? And I was thinking, actually, if we did go on a walk and got people involved, then people within the constraints of the COVID virus restrictions could start filling up the holiday homes that are empty. They could take, we're mobilising people to actually spend in the Scottish economy without having. So many people have been complaining, that English people aren't coming up to Scotland on holiday and etc. etc. There's been a lot of talk about that, and actually, us as Scottish people, us Scottish residents, we can fill those gaps. We can fill those gaps from people who are worried about COVID, quite rightly worried about COVID. So that was my initial thought, and I thought, yeah, get my boots on, my rucksack out, off on a walk, and let's see if we can mobilise Scotland, and not just mobilise the economy, but also I was thinking of things like I think we need to show a positive side to the Yes movement, and we want to be building and already looking at what the sort of communities that we want to live in when we have independence. And it was just daft things like, well, not daft things, they're not daft at all. Like I was on a bridge a couple of weeks ago, and instead of just standing on the bridge, we did a bit of litter picking because we had the time to do it, and we were there, and I thought, this is another thing. We want to live in a nice, clean space. We want to be living in an independent Scotland that supports independent businesses, and all these kind of things that, along with the covenant, the digital covenant, we can actually take this positive vibe across Scotland to everybody, regardless of whether they support independence or not, and show a positive face for independence rather than just people seeing, as it often is from the other side, is we're just seen as a bunch of nationalists doing something. Let's do something positive for Scotland that nobody can deny. Yeah, that was sort of where it came from. I think somebody else said, are you for real? And I went, yeah. And then I don't know what happened after that. It just went mad. Yeah. So that's basically where my point came from.
And you're intending to walk the full 1320?
Oh yeah, unless I mean, obviously, if my hamstrings snap or if I just fall in a ditch or something, yeah, I intend to set off as if I'm going to complete. So yeah, that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Me too.
Brilliant. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we got the nutters on today.
Well, you kind of attract them, Dave. Let's be honest.
Talking about nutters, I got contacted by Dean, who we'll all know. Contacted me on Twitter, and he sent me a copy of the original 500 Miles book with all the photographs in it. So it looks like that's going to be getting published shortly as well.
Grand.
That'll be quite cool. So I'll send you a copy later on if it's okay. Just looking for proof of it.
Not for discussion tonight, but I'm going to speak to Eva for a second when she's talking about keep Scotland tidy.
Yeah.
I'll be making a request later on for cans for the Freedom Bell as you do that. I'm not going to discuss it tonight, but it's one of my plans for what's going to happen. Oh
yeah, we've got a big thing of them in the Yes Straven. We have got a big plastic thing full of cans ready for you. So yes.
I used to have a back garden. I don't at the moment. I'm trying to cut down hedges to see if I can find out where it is.
Oh dear.
Brilliant.
Diane, you had the covenant as very central to all of this.
Yes.
You had keep Scotland tidy as central to this. Did you have any other themes that you were thinking of?
Yeah, we were thinking about the Keep Scotland the Brand one after discussing with or when I spoke with Ruth Davidson for the digital rally, for the Covenant Digital Rally.
Ruth Watson.
Ruth Watson, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm leading that in.
I was thinking,
Sorry.
wow.
it's been quite a day, and total apologies, Ruth Watson. That was a total slip. No, when I was speaking to Ruth about it, she kind of emphasised the fact that while she runs that campaign, it's actually a grassroots campaign that we as people need to take on. And the fact that we're travelling around the country means that we can promote all those different brands as we go, and help to get them a bit more exposure, and help to just promote to people outside that maybe don't think about it, where all the products come from and how much we do produce for ourselves. Because in actual fact, when you consider everything that we produce in the country in terms of fish, in terms of meat, fruit, vegetables, all the rest of it, we could be self-sufficient. We don't necessarily need to be importing anything. We just need to be buying our own brand. So we were looking to get in touch with them, and then also hoping to hook up with Jim Fairley at Farming for Yes, because a lot of the walk's going to take us through rural areas. So it's connecting with them and finding out about the priorities of the farmers and the rural communities. Because, well, I live in a rural community, and I know for a fact that rural communities are often ignored over larger cities. And we have real difficulty here getting just funding for public services or getting resources to these areas. It's something I work with every day. So I think just promoting the whole communities connecting and us being one rather than being individual, and how we can all connect and connect really, really easily. So that's, it's almost like going on the walk to take people with you. You want to build that unity and take everyone with you. Yeah. I think unity and community are probably two of the common themes that will run through. Which are two of my favourite things.
I saw what you did there.
Next we look for a three-word phrase for ages. That sounds like a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Let me ask you two experienced walkers. Diane, in the earlier discussion, we know that some people will turn up, say in a village when you're walking through.
Yeah.
Will welcome you. Will walk with you perhaps for a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. And that's what we're hoping will happen. But if someone else wants to walk, say the 500 or say the 1320, what specific equipment would you warn them that they must have? Because you're going to be going out in September, October, November.
My first thing, it's actually obviously people are going to be wearing either boots or walking shoes. And absolutely 100% make sure that those boots are properly worn in. That means if you wear those boots until they fit your foot, so you're not getting any blisters or any rubbing is all sorted out, because there's no easy way of saying it. If those boots rub at all anywhere, you will get blisters. So if they're properly worn in, then that's going to save you a lot of pain, So that would be my first thing. I don't know about you, Carl, but that's my first.
Yeah, obviously it starts with boots, because that's that's what it's all about. The feet.
Yeah.
But on a similar note, don't just think about the boots. Think about the socks you're going to wear with the boots.
Yes.
They need to be comfortable enough that they sit right. They want to allow your feet to breathe, because you don't want to be getting athlete's foot or anything like that. At some point, if you're unlucky, you're going to be going through a lot of wet weather, which we did in the original 500 and even more in the second. And if you haven't taken that into consideration, you're really going to be struggling, because at the end of the day, you've got wet socks, and that's going to rub in a different way than dry socks would. So think about the socks you wear. Make sure that you don't just use the shoes, but also the socks that you're intending to use, and choose them wisely.
So as we get closer to the actual event, we can call on you and Diana I know has got this in mind, we can call on you to make sure that anyone that intends to do a fair distance has actually got the right equipment, and we can put that together as advice to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we could probably put something together, couldn't we, Carl? Just like
yeah.
a list of, in fact, for general purposes, actually, less is more.
And some do's and don'ts. Yeah.
Because you don't want to be carrying absolutely anything that that you don't need. We learn a big lesson with that on the second one, but you don't carry anything that you don't absolutely need.
And home piece plasters.
Yeah, plasters are really, really good.
Yeah.
Anything like that. Decent pair of needles should you get blisters. To actually do it properly, and creams just to keep your feet in order. If your feet are in order, it's fairly easy going. The rest of it is clothes, different layers of clothes, so that because you haven't got time to stop and start. If you're doing those kind of distances, you even just to stop to take a photo is almost too much sometimes. You're always losing time with it, and at some point it's gaining the momentum afterwards. It's not just the stopping, it's the starting. And it sounds for regular walking that sounds silly, but it's an accumulative thing, and you do notice it at some point. So the idea is like if you've got some sort of functions shirt underneath and a shirt, and then a normal jacket or something else in between, then you can, if you start to get a bit too warm, you can unzip it or unbutton it to a certain point, and that'll regulate it. If it starts to get a bit chilly, if you're starting to slow down or you've had a break, then you can zip it up so your temperature remains constant, and that increases the functionality of the body. And I learned a lot on the first 500 that made the second 500 from that point of view significantly easy. We had a lot worse weather. We went through three major named storms in the first week or so, and and we still kept. We still maintained the time. It was pretty miserable, but we still.
Was it? I was going off on a tangent then about fluty dumpling, but never mind. I would say that don't get any what you're wearing. You don't want anything. You don't want to be wearing jeans. You want anything that's going to get wet is going to dry easily, or it's going to let the water run off it. You don't want to be wearing anything heavy. Just lightweight, because even actually when it's quite cold, when you're walking at a momentum, your body generates heat, so you don't want to be putting too much on. Less is more.
It's
but
only
when
for the evenings.
You need
it's only for the evenings. I mean, if you're camping or something like that, or if you're stopping, then it's nice to have a fleece or something at the end that you can put on. But you certainly don't need that. It's never going to be that cold, for this anyway, that you would require something like that. And less is always more. Have a torch. Torch is always good, because at some point you're traveling in the dark. Irrespective of you saying no, we'll be there by light, or we'll stop when it gets dark. At some point you think, if we stop now, we've got to make up this distance. Let's just keep going. And so torches and little things to maybe some chocolate or some nuts or whatever you like with you, so you don't have to stop, but it's easily accessible, just to keep the energy up. And drink. You should always have drink. Water. It shouldn't be stuck in the back of your rucksack, even if you're wearing just a small one. It's honestly too much effort at some point to be taking it off. You need one readily available. And because drinking, you lose so much, you lose so many calories, and you lose so much liquid, even if the weather's regular when you're doing those kind of distances. And
then that makes me think of another thing that quite regularly... no, not that. Painkillers, I was thinking. Oh,
okay.
I don't know where you were going with that then.
My bad.
I haven't got there yet. Settle. Right, painkillers. Painkillers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, whatever ones they are, you would take for general things, because your body will be sore, you will ache, you don't want to be having headaches, you don't just I'm not saying just take painkillers willy-nilly, but just make sure you have some painkillers with you.
And the thing with painkillers is, and that's something because I'm a trained nurse, and when we did the original, I realized at some point, if we took painkillers as well, some of them have the paracetamol, ibuprofen, they have an anti-inflammatory thing. So if you take them at the start of the day, not only does it help with the aches and pains you generally have, but it stops the swelling, which stops the rubbing, which stops further damage to your feet and whatever. So that's always good.
Can I bring Diane back in again?
Sure.
Diane, the publicity for this says every city and every town. Now, I know the route isn't necessarily fully finalised, but could you talk about how you have to prepare for choosing the route?
Well, yeah, I think the route I think the biggest thing we want to try and get with the route is to hit the 13-20 miles on the nose, and to cover as much of the mainland of Scotland as possible. Now, that's quite tricky to do. And what we also did was, when we were speaking to the team that did the walks before, they were saying that on one of the walks the distance was quite far, so to try and limit the distance to 15 to 20 miles stretch per day. So we kind of started with that, and then looked at where we could start on the mainland, and then just tried to take the route all the way around the country, hitting every town and every city. Now, every city will be hit, that's not so difficult, but obviously hitting every town is very, very difficult. It's just not possible. But what we wanted to do was try and take routes that covered the coastal areas and a part of the inland areas, so that even if we weren't going into a town or a village, then the people that were surrounding it, we would be close enough that people could come and wouldn't have to travel far in order to be able to join the walk and see the walkers coming past and join any events or wave their flags or whatever else. But obviously what we at the moment we do have something in draft form, but we need to discuss that with Carl and Wren and various other people in the team, and it will need tweaked ever so slightly here and there. And what we are aiming to do, and we would hope, and we're going to put a call out for this in a couple of weeks' time, is once we have a route that Carl and Wren have agreed with, basically they're the people that are going to walk this route, so they have to be comfortable with it, is we want to put a call out to volunteers all across the country to see if people can go out and record parts of that route for us, video it, so that we can see, and so that Carl and Wren and also myself can see where we would be walking, so that any potential pitfalls or any issues with the route and that we might need to change it because it's not so suitable can be done beforehand, and it gives everybody a good idea of what they're facing before they face it.
So you'll not be walking up the side of the motorway with chuckies?
Well, yeah, I heard that could be a bit of a problem. Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, you do kind of want to get off the main roads to a certain extent because they're a bit quieter, it's a bit more comfortable. Whether that's going to be possible around the whole route or not, I don't know yet. But it's everybody else's input. We just kind of sat and went, we'll see what we can get, and then everybody else can amend it and tweak it and whatever else. But yeah, the biggest consideration was trying to make it accessible for everyone and not just going all the way down the coast, but of course not going too far inland, or because again, you have to get back out again. And often when you go too far inland, it's so rural and it's remote that the services are not there. So there's all these types of things that we've been taking into consideration, and then Wren and Carl will over the next couple of weeks be doing the same, I think. But we do hope to have I think the aim was to have a finalised route by the first week in August. And I know that we're looking to launch a website, and then all the information for the walk will be on the website. People can register for the walk there. They can provide donations or sponsorship towards the walkers in order to help with the costs. Volunteers can register there. Yes, groups will get information on where we will be and when we will be, so that they can go and arrange their own peripheral events. I mean, we're trying to build something that has pretty much everything you could think of in it. And Wren and Carl's experience will help us to build that, because Sorry,
wow.
I had an outage. Sorry. Wren and Carl's experience would help us to build that because they've done the walk before, so they know what they're facing. But basically, if we can try and just get it all in one place, then whenever anybody has a query, they can just go to the website and ask.
I think basically, I think Jim and Dean are on board for this as well. I don't know if they're doing the full 1320, but I think, well, Dean's definitely interested in doing at least 500. Jim had a few queries about the timing. As I say, but Jim, at the end of the day, we can't wait till the spring, but then it's too late.
No, we can't.
Yeah,
not at all.
We just,
Yeah.
The good thing is you'll not get very many midges at that time of year.
This is true.
Yeah, that's grand. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
Diane, can I bring up volunteers and support? You mentioned the fact that you want a video of a route. I've already put my name down for doing part of what I think you're wanting. All of this has to involve the Yes movement.
Yes.
Whether it's N number of walkers are going to arrive in your town at 5 o'clock this evening, make them welcome. Because as Carol said earlier on, I'll never ever forget the post that came from Fraserburgh when you arrived there. When the man said, nothing like this has ever happened in Fraserburgh before. You know, it's amazing, and that's what we want to do, is get the spirit of yes involved in this. And we're going to need support people when the walkers are there and how they should take that forward. We're going to need help on things like first aid or hospitality or accommodation, as much as the yes movement can back everyone that's taking part, even if it's just to attend and walk 5 miles with the group that are doing it. It makes a big difference to that.
Yeah.
And walk at the pace that they feel comfortable with.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I mean, as I said, when we first had the conversation with Wren and with Carl again this week, that was one of the things we said, was that actually the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have the volunteers in place for first aid and support for the core walkers. That's the most important thing. Yep. So if people from all over the country, from the Yes movement, they don't have to be from the Yes movement, it could be anybody. But yeah, we will be looking for volunteers to support them and keep water supplies in a car convoy behind, and make sure that they have proper first aid equipment, and make sure that we know and somebody is trained in all those basic things, so that the walkers feel safe and secure whilst going down such a long route. And yes, we absolutely would love for all Yes groups to pop up with events everywhere. And that's very much up to them. I mean, I suppose the door's open for all of the groups to decide what it is they want to do in their area and how they want to do it. And that leaves, the likes of Carl, Wren and myself and others that are going to be joining the route a nice big surprise when they get to a location.
And with that, it's grand, because if you had like on the website, where people could like chat, so sort of like I don't know, yes, clacks could be going, oh well, we're going to do this picnic or something, and then another group go, oh yeah, we'll do a picnic, we'll do a little pick as well, and they could have a swapping of ideas, and it will get them talking to each other, and I think that'd be grand.
And the nice thing was, I remember with the first 500, there was sometimes we weren't even in a village. It was nowhere. It was in some long road, sort of went down, and then we ended up. And there's a car parked on the side of the road, and just as we walk by, they say, "Oh, any of you want any water? Here's some water." We've been waiting here for 2 hours. We knew you were coming here sometime, and that was incredible. They got sandwiches for us and water, and other people with motorhomes, they were waiting at positions unbeknown to us. And said, "Do you want to use our toilet?" Which was the ladies. I remember all the ladies.
There was a queue. There was a queue at the toilets.
It was beautiful, this initiative that people they couldn't do a lot. They couldn't take time out for this, that, or the other. But in those moments, what they provided to us and their participation made it so much easier for us to do the thing, and it made them part of the whole story, because this isn't just about this group or that group or this person or that person. It's a collective. It's like all the atoms coming together to form an object, or all the DNA coming together to form a person. And that's what this independent movement is, and that's what Scotland's all about.
Yeah. I would say one final point there as well on toilets. We are aiming to have a motorhome in the convoy for the full route at the moment. May not necessarily be the same motorhome, but we would put a call out to anyone in the movement who has one that could cover a stretch of their area, so that we would just know that we don't have to worry about those toilets in between locations. I think particularly in the Highlands, it's quite sparse up there. And facilities are not necessarily just that close by. So I think having that backup of a toilet on hand at all points would be an excellent plus to the route.
Usually because one of the walkers is sleeping in it.
Yeah. Yeah. The road to Auchnasheen, that's my really bad toilet memory, because it was such a long road and it was too dark, you couldn't nip over anywhere to do anything. So having a toilet on hand, on call, whistle and the toilet appears would be grand.
Yes, I'm thinking I would like that a lot as well, to be honest.
Do you know, and the other thing is, thinking about that, actually kind of is connected, but there are so many, even in places we turned up in, I am going to say the word, Banff. Banff. Turned up in Banff, and they actually did have toilets, but most of the toilets in places are now closed. There aren't public toilets. In Banff, actually, we could. You had to go to a shop, get a key to the town hall, and then go into the town hall to use the loo. And that's how it worked. But even in places that have, small towns, small villages, there are no toilet facilities. Their public toilets are shut. That's something that's don't want to talk about it endlessly, but it's another point.
Three key points. Can I raise, Diane?
Yeah.
One, it's named after 1320.
Yeah.
It starts on the 18th of September.
Yes.
There's something planned for the 5th of November, and then a final date of the 30th of November, just to give everyone diary dates to remember.
Yes, that's correct. So starting on the 18th of September, I'm looking at Kyla Lochlash for starting on the 18th of September. And that's obviously, we know, the anniversary of our referendum in 2014, the 1320 from the Declaration of Arbroath, and the 700-year anniversary gives the symbolism for that. The 5th of November, there's something planned, I hear, in Edinburgh. The walkers will be arriving in Edinburgh, and there's an event planned for them there. And then I know that they're looking to plan a big event at the border on the 30th when the walkers have completed their full route. And that involves possibly some pots and pans. I don't know much about the pots and pans. You might know more about that, Mike.
No, what I do know, and this is a shout out to anyone that takes part in Bridges for Indy, there will be some very, very special bridges that will be crossed on the route, particularly in the closing stages. I'm not going to say any more, but if you take part in Bridges, watch out for the route when it's finally published.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
It's a shame there is an event taking place in Westminster on the 5th of November.
Settle.
Who said there wasn't?
Yes, well,
Oh dear.
Oh, brilliant. I suppose somebody could pop one up and we could have them coinciding in Edinburgh and Westminster. If anyone wants to take that on, they can feel free.
We can basically have a big screen to watch Westminster going up in flames.
I was avoiding a direct reference.
Also here.
It would detract somewhat from our event in Edinburgh. So,
I've always thought that's the wrong way of picturing the end of Westminster. It should be slowly sinking into the Thames.
Oh,
I just watch the bubbles rise.
Yeah.
Oh, heck, right, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, I think it's one of these events that kind of, you know, okay, it's based around the walkers and the walkers down there, but anybody and everybody can get involved. And with any idea that they want, you know, it's basically come together and do what you think is going to be good. All ideas welcome, all groups welcome, all volunteers welcome, you know, join together and let's, you know, show people what Scotland is.
Exactly. Well,
absolutely.
This is something we made a point of time and time again. It isn't the walkers a means to an end. They're a thing to facilitate the actual story, but really it's there so everybody else can. So everybody that contributes a Twitter reference to the movement, or everybody that comes out and gives us a bottle of water or waves us on or whatever, everybody's a part of it. Everybody.
And I was just going to say, but on top of what we've got, and not to forget, because it's the driving force, is the covenant.
Yes.
Because the covenant is so important. I was having a conversation today. Even if you sort of understand the covenant, a lot of resistance to the covenant has been people saying, oh, computers, and I have to put this in, I have to put that in. And these are even people who want independence, and they're still struggling with get the bloody covenant signed. Get it done.
For me, it's use your sovereignty. And take your country back, and that's what the covenant's for. That's what it will lead to.
Exactly. And I think the issue of the covenant is very strongly, and something that I believe strongly in, is the Declaration of Arbroath, which is that this is all, this stems from it. Now, it was a controversial thing. It was a time where Scotland was more aware of the danger, which is kind of very relevant now, so many years later, that Scotland was looking at England as being a bigger threat than Islam. And England was going off fighting the Crusades at that time. And Scotland said to the Pope, because at that time everybody was Catholic, except for the Muslims, and they were saying, actually, we've got bigger problems here. And funny, it's the system is, the situation is almost exactly the same. And it's on the basis of the declaration that Scotland did at that time, that has given Scotland this right to sovereignty. Every other, this was a form of democracy in a time where only the Greeks had really talked about it on a state level. Everybody else was there were kings and there were rulers and there were dictators and whatever. Scotland said, no, it's not the power of God. It's not by the will of a king. It is by the will of the people. And that was the significant thing. And it was so significant. Some people say, oh, well, it wasn't really a contract, or it wasn't really that relevant. It was just a diplomatic agreement. No, the United States, that doesn't mean a great deal nowadays with Trump's America, but the United States Constitution was based on our Declaration of Arbroath. It was considered one of the first contracts of democracy that had ever actually been written. And that is what gives this sovereignty. It begins with that. And so to ignore it, to just presume that this shite that Westminster is trying to feed us at this moment is ridiculous, because they obviously don't want people to believe, because if they believe it, they know bloody well that we have absolutely every single right to say, you know what, we don't want this union. We are not beholden to you. We will choose and dictate under our terms. We don't need your permission. We are informing you. We're not asking you. And so for me, this particular year is very important. And considering Brexit at the end of this year and the absolute, I won't say what I'm thinking, but I'm sure you can imagine, that's going on in Westminster with Brexit and with the whole situation, it's really this is really the last stand for us to make this point absolutely clear. And so it works really well with the covenant, and it works really well with the whole issue of it began with that. And on that basis, we have the entitlement as free Scots, irrespective of where we were born. We have the entitlement as free Scots to say, I live in Scotland, this is my country, I will defend it, and I will not tolerate the tyranny that's happening down south, just as in 1320.
But I think Diane's going to have to shoot now. If I'd like to say thanks for coming along, Diane, and telling us what was happening, and basically we'll be in touch over the following days and weeks to get everything put together. It's been great talking to you guys again. It's been too long since we've had a get together.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
We've not got enough time to go over everything on this one.
No.
You're more welcome to come on any other time and give us some more of your memories. And
thank you.
I would assume you are going to be starting to do some walking kind of shortly to get some miles into your legs before you start.
Yeah, I've got my boots. I've got my boots. I'm starting to wear them in now. So yeah.
I just realised that we've actually got less time before it starts than it'll actually take to run the thing.
Yes. Yeah.
72
Yeah.
days
Yay.
long. It'll be 72 days long. We've got 61 days until it starts.
Right.
What Dave and I will do on any shows that we're doing, we'll make sure that everyone is updated on what the developments are, what the finalised route is, what timescales are involved, etc. Where to register if you want to take part. And we'll do that, Dave, as we go ahead.
Grand.
So thanks very much for coming along, guys. It's been great.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Always is. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.